I'm Beth, and these are my memories. To the complex and precious people who appear in them, thank you. I forgive you, and I'm sorry. You shaped me, and I carry you still. In remembering, I've come to see us all more clearly, not as villains or saints, but as humans doing the best we knew how. I must have forgotten. Until now. We had a reunion for one side of the family or the other about once every year. They weren't the kind where people come from all over the country and wear matching shirts. My people in the 1970s would have thought that was frivolous and wasteful. We just met at a park shelter and ate the potluck food everyone brought and visited with cousins and people we hadn't seen since the last one. I usually didn't know most of the people there. I just loved the reunions because we kids could eat as much dessert as we wanted and wear ourselves out on the playground equipment. There were so many over the years that I've lost track of which side of the family this particular event belonged to. I think it was my dad's side, although I can't recall anyone in particular who was there. Were they sure we knew these people? We kids were left to our own devices for most of it, but we're supposed to use our manners and impress everyone with the excellent parenting we were getting.
Hello, it's nice to see you again.
The cousins, well, I assume they were cousins, had been playing on the swings and merry-go-round long enough that I was ready to go back for another helping of Cherry Delight. I would never, ever, ever turn down more Cherry Delight. Any dessert that didn't involve celery or other vegetables trapped inside some neon-tinted jello was a bonus.
Is that ham in there?
But Cherry Delight, that was my favorite. It actually still is, although I can't remember the last time I had it. Under the park shelter, every picnic table was covered with big baskets of food, plates, plastic forks, and napkins. More critical to this story, every table had at least 3 people of mixed generations sitting at it, eating, talking, laughing about their ancient adventures when they were growing up together, or just watching their own kids play. It was a very hot day, so being under the roof and out of the sun was a relief. Next to the dessert table, where I spied the sacred Cherry Delight, was a large tub of canned soft drinks. Parched from playing in the sun, I thought how good a Coca-Cola would taste. The fact that they were all on ice made it even more tempting. Some cousin, whose name I didn't remember or maybe never knew, jumped in front of me and started digging through the tub, tossing cans left and right in a frenzy for an orange Fanta. He threw the rejects aside like he was angry at them, apparently not concerned that each one was a potential grenade. I had no idea who this kid was. I guessed he was part of our group. Some mysterious cousin brought by some distant aunt or uncle. When your grandparents had 10 siblings, it would be unreasonable to expect all of us derivatives to remember one another.
Do you know these people? I thought you knew them.
Finally, this picky kid found what he was after and looked satisfied with his catch. I stood back a moment to be sure he wasn't about to cut me off again. And once I determined he was really done, I stepped up to claim the Coca-Cola that was making my mouth water. Coca-Cola was a special thing for my family. We usually only had Cokes on Sunday night when we ate popcorn and watched Walt Disney on TV, or if someone came over to the house. And that one time when we drove to Virginia. There were several visible at the top of the tub, so I picked one and pulled it out. I wasn't about to be as fussy as the Phantom maniac. I was showing my good manners. The icy water dripping off the can and down my hand immediately made me forget how hot I'd been only a minute earlier. I reached up with my other hand and seized the metal pop top, the kind that used to come all the way off until someone invented the pull tab. If you ever had the misfortune of stepping on a pop top on the beach with your bare feet, you know what a great invention the pull tab was. Judith and I used to collect all the pop tops after people opened their cans, and we made a door curtain for our bedroom. It was nothing short of treacherous. You had to use both hands to pull it back to pass through, or it would slice you right open.
Ow, my face!
But the curtain of pop tops belongs to another chapter. This story is about thirst. I grabbed the ring on the pop top and gave it a firm pull to break the seal, all ready to take a huge chug. But that huge chug I was craving? That's not what happened. We all know the sound of the can cracking open, the ka-ch of the broken seal and the escaping carbonation. That's normal. What happened next was not normal. The instant I snapped back the pop top and started to pull it off the can, the ka-ch was a little bit different than usual. It began k, and then suddenly the brown liquid inside began geysering up, up, up into the rafters of the park shelter. Now, instead of ch, it was the sound of fizzing on steroids, loud and splashy. It shot out with all the fury of Vesuvius. If the volcano had only been cold and gluey, I let out a small shout,
Oh, no!
mortified that I was single-handedly destroying the family reunion.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, my word. Good heavens, what are you doing?
But there was nothing I could do to stop the eruption. Someone bellowed,
"Get it out of the park shelter!"
Oh, my goodness.
but as soon as I stepped out from under the roof, the cola flare finally ended. All eyes were on me. Shock. Disbelief. Blame? I couldn't be sure. I was wet and sticky. The tables nearest me were drenched and tacky. Adults of all ages scurried out of the danger zone as Coca-Cola dripped from the underside of the roof above us. I wouldn't have thought those older people could have moved that fast. Zip, zip, zoom! The Coke dripped from the rafters into open bags of potato chips. Deviled eggs sat in a bubbly moat in the little dented serving platter that kept them upright. Saran wrap over bowls of potato salad had at least protected the thing I most hated out of all the food that was available. The plates that people had been eating off of were slushy and gross, and already the bees had noticed the sugar had been released, and they headed straight for it. The Cherry Delight, I noticed with dismay, was now swimming in fizzy brown goo. I had ruined everything. I don't remember another reunion from that side of the family, but then again, I don't really know which side it was. Maybe they just didn't want me there to drench everyone in a sticky disaster. Or maybe the later ones just pale by comparison in my memory bank. I also can't recall if I was in any trouble, or even if anyone thought it was intentional. Nobody accused me. I blame the Fanta fiend cousin who was shaking up all the cans on his flavor quest. I felt bad, but I also thought it was hilarious. I tried very hard not to laugh. I'm sure my outwardly apparent shame was why I escaped unscathed. But like all of the other mortifying days, the Coca-Cola geyser never truly left my mind. Or my white top, which never quite looked the same again. In retrospect, white for a playground was probably a bad choice to begin with. I don't know how many times I wore it again before it ended up in the furniture polish rag pile. Childhood mishaps last forever, in memory and cotton. But all of that came later. In the moment, none of it could stop me from pouring off the unnecessary ingredient and scarfing down more Cherry Delight. I hadn't lost sight of priorities, after all. I was a pretty awkward second grader, but who wasn't in 1973? Terrible haircuts, hideous glasses, and loud fabrics made from plastic, polyester. But school was my thing. I was good at every subject, and my teachers considered me their gifted student. Hershey Elementary wasn't a big school. It seemed big to little me, but at that time, it was the only school I'd ever gone to. My future self would recognize that by comparison, it was small. I didn't even know all of the kids. In fact, I didn't even know all of the kids in East Tip Heights, my neighborhood. But I felt like I belonged at Hershey. My sister Judith went there. I went there. And someday I expected that my baby brother Tommy would go there, although he was still too little. And then one day, everything changed. I wasn't going to go there anymore. Dad had decided to go into business with another man in Fowler, Indiana. We were moving. We were moving out of the East Tip house and away from Maggie across the street. We were leaving behind the backyard shed and the sidewalk where I punctured my heel. Moving away from Wildcat Creek where I'd lost my boot, and away from the abandoned house in the woods that we weren't allowed to go to anymore. Away from the front porch where my parents always took photos of Judith and me dressed up for church. Away from the cornfield on the far side of the wire fence, and the cows that I looked forward to in the fall. Away from Buck Creek and my grandparents' freezing cold attic bedroom. Away from the culvert under the road that appeared in my nightmares about being trapped. We were leaving East Tip Heights in Tippecanoe County and would be living in Benton County in just a few days. But it felt so strange. Unreal. It was the first move I could remember, and on one hand, I couldn't really comprehend how my life might change. On the other, I had a sense of dread about the unknown and what this might mean in my little world. It was my last day at Hershey. We studied English, math, science, and social studies like every other day. And like every other day, at the end of the day, all my friends just got up and headed out to the buses. No one seemed to remember that I wasn't going to be coming back. They all just left, as if it didn't matter, as if my leaving didn't matter. As I collected my things and got ready to walk out to the line of school buses, my second grade teacher, Mrs. Ruppnow, called me over to her desk. She said softly,
I know today is your last day, and you're going to be starting in a new school. That might be scary, but you're a brave girl and you'll be okay. I want you to have this for good luck. All of these things are supposed to bring you good luck.
It was a little heart pendant holding a wishbone and a pearl. Fragile things meant to carry luck. I was a second grader in polyester pants and crooked glasses, unsure of how to say goodbye or even if I should. But when my eyes met hers, the compassion I saw in them was so generous. I still remember how much it meant to me, that someone was going to miss me. The other kids had left without a word. That silence echoed far longer than I expected. We moved several more times over the years, and I never maintained any of the friends I'd left behind. And it made me reticent to put too much into making friends at all. I think that echo began here, the first moment I felt like my presence didn't matter. But the pendant stayed with me. The heart, the wishbone, the pearl. I know I had it years later when we moved to Ohio. After that, I'm not sure. So many moves, so many boxes. Maybe it's tucked in a drawer somewhere. Maybe it's gone. But I didn't need to hold it to remember. It was the first time I understood that kindness could be worn, remembered, and carried forward like a talisman and a blessing. The Fowler house was pretty new. It still smelled of fresh paint and carpet, and somehow we had a piano now. Or did we have the piano in East Tip and I just don't remember it there? Either way, Judith and I both took piano lessons, although she was far more advanced. I never reached the point of playing motorcycle cop with the same mastery. The yard was a lot smaller than in East Tip, and the side bordered on a cornfield, but without a fence. There was an enormous black walnut tree on the cornfield side of the house. Sometimes in the fall I would go pick at the green husks, hoping to find edible nuts inside, remembering the little crackers and picks Mom always placed out on tables around the holidays. Years later, I learned that you can't plant tomatoes near black walnut trees, and thought, what a shame that is. Such a beautiful tree. But if you want tomatoes, you need a much larger yard than the one we had in Fowler. In the wintertime, we would ice skate in the frozen tractor ruts that had filled with water during one of the autumn rains. Some wider places were low enough to get some decent speed going, until the inevitable cornstalk poking out even half an inch stopped my blade in its tracks, and I would go flying into a pile of snow or another kid. I had been flat-footed growing up, always having to wear orthopedic saddle shoes to build up my arches. And when I would ice skate for very long, the bottoms of my feet would spasm into terrible cramps. My mom sometimes had the same pain, although she didn't even have flat feet. We used to call it our arches falling, for whatever that was supposed to mean. In East Tip, everything had been far away. Even the grocery store took 15 or 20 minutes to get to by car. We had always gone to Payless in Lafayette, and if I was lucky, Mom would let me stay outside while she shopped and play on the retaining wall at the side of the parking lot. But in Fowler, we lived in town, and so everything was much closer. Walking distance. Mom used to make me walk up to the IGA, a quarter mile or so away, and buy her cigarettes. It was next to the 100-Mile House, which was so named because Fowler was 100 miles outside of Chicago. I was 8 and then 9 years old, and sending kids to procure parents' smokes was not an uncommon thing in the 1970s. I truly hope kids would get turned away now, but when I showed up and told them what kind she wanted,
You again, kid?
and stuck out my sticky little hand with the wadded up money in it, they took the money and handed over the contraband. I hated being told to do this. I hated my parents smoking in the first place, but this was worse. It made me complicit. I was mortified to be seen asking for, paying for, carrying them back home. I doubt anyone thought they were for me, but I really just wanted to be invisible. An elementary school kid carrying cigarettes around town, for Pete's sake. We walked all over by ourselves as kids in Fowler. It was a small town, but it was big enough that probably nobody knew who I was. Tommy, who was about 5, and I walked from the elementary school to the Presbyterian church on Wednesday nights after school. Usually the guy, I guess he was the minister, but I don't know because we didn't even go to that church, would have us sing songs.
I like to grab brass rings on the merry-go-round.
And they would give us a piece of American cheese toasted onto a piece of white bread. Okay for an after-school snack, although if you got a cold one, sometimes the whole cheese came off with the first bite. Then all you were left with was a piece of dry white toast. On one side, half toast was theology aplenty. We didn't go to church routinely anymore. Sometimes if we did, it was to Trinity United Methodist in Lafayette. But we only went out to Buck Creek for special occasions now. Fowler was too far to go every week. Judith already went to Benton Central Junior, Senior, and she rode a bus. I don't remember riding a bus to school, but I don't remember walking to school either. Teleportation for the win! I had made a friend, but not good enough for me to remember her name. She lived with her mom in a tiny house next to the train tracks. She had straight, dark hair and got very excited when her mom asked her to take letters to the post office. She got to keep the change after buying the postage. She was obsessed with the movie Deliverance. I don't know who let her watch Deliverance in 4th grade, banjos and all, but it was another 20 years before I saw it. One day our 4th grade teacher had us all line up in class and we all got the MMR vaccine. My friend What's-Her-Name and I stood in line and got the MMR vaccine together. No one got pulled out. No one objected. I don't think my parents even knew, but that's just what happened. And I never came down with M, or R. Well, I did actually get mumps in junior high school, but that was many years later and only because a girl on our 9th grade trip to Washington, D.C. let me taste her mumps-tainted ice cream cone.
Mint chocolate chip? Ew.
They also had us gather in the cafeteria and put fluoride treatments on our teeth. Then they sent home little red dye tablets that we were supposed to chew after brushing our teeth. Anywhere we missed would stay red, and we were supposed to brush again until all of the red was gone. If my teeth looked like I'd just devoured a live animal, then I had done a bad job. Fowler was where I tried to be a Girl Scout. I walked all over town going door to door selling Girl Scout cookies. There were a lot of elderly people in Fowler, living in fancy Victorian houses. Going up to one of those doors meant I was going to be there a while, but I'd probably sell a few boxes. The people in those houses seemed very eager to have someone to talk to. Despite my enthusiasm for cookies, I didn't earn a single badge. I didn't learn to be ambitious for quite a long time. Maybe baked goods were enough. The 4th of July celebration in Fowler was thrilling. The fireworks were set off over the lake at the local golf course. I had never seen a golf course until Fowler. How sophisticated, I thought, but in a smaller word. To lie on the blanket with my family and watch the fireworks in the sky while they reflected off the lake was just breathtaking. The other summer memory I have is lying in bed trying to fall asleep. Judith playing WLS out of Chicago every night on the AM radio and hearing,
What's your name? What's your name? What's your name? What's your name?
and don't get me wrong, it's a great song, but little Beth thought it was so creepy sounding that when it came on as I was closing my eyes, I was sure to be awake until long after the mosquito fogger truck had gone by. And if you think we all jumped up to seal the windows against whatever poison the mosquito fogger was filling the outside air with moments before we smelled it wafting through our windows into our bedrooms, you would be wrong. The eruptions, emotional and liquid, had quieted for the time being. The new house felt modern, quiet, safe, like a place for us to grow together. We didn't know it yet, but something heavier was shifting beneath the surface. These stories mark the sweetness, the spectacle, and the laughter before the break. I carry them forward, knowing now that all was not as it seemed. Thank you for listening. These are my memories, and maybe they echo yours too. I must have forgotten, but I remember now. If this episode stirred something in you, please consider sharing it, subscribing, or leaving a review. Sound design for this episode includes excerpts from MuseHub and Pixabay. These audio textures help carry the memory, shape the emotional arc, and are honored with gratitude here.